Hello everybody, it's Sarah, and today is once again the time to start the two videos that every year I both dread and look forwards to. And that is talking about all the series that I have on my shelves. Hence why, if you can see behind me right now, there's a lot of bald spots on my shelves because all the books are currently next to me, so yay. Also, if you just hear a loud thump at one point during this video, it's because one of the many stacks of books next to me just straight up fell over. They already fell over twice. I don't want to know what my neighbor thinks I'm doing currently. But yeah, today it is time to talk about all the unfinished series on my shelves. That includes three types of series. The first type of series is obviously DNFs, so series that I have not finished but that I also don't intend to finish. Usually with those series I also include series that I don't necessarily have on my shelves anymore, that, you know, I DNF'd sometime during the year that I have already on hold, but, you know, I just wanted to give you an update that I have DNF'd those series, although I sometimes forget about some of those series. The second type of series that I will talk about in this video is just the typical unfinished series. So there's any amount of books out in that series, however I have not read up to the latest book yet. And the third type of series are of course the series that I am caught up on. So series that don't necessarily have all books published yet, but where I have read the latest book that was published. And as always, this will be quite a long video. I won't say too much about any of the series. I'm just gonna tell you how many of the books I have read, in what segment, you know, the series belongs into, and I'll just try and get through it quite quickly because if my maths is correct, I have like 50 series that I need to talk to you today, so let's get right into it. And let's start with a few series that I have DNF'd and that I don't have on my shelves currently. I'll start with my DNFs generally right now. So the first one I have is the Alcatraz series by Brandon Sanderson. Technically I am caught up on the series, so I have read all 5 books. However, if you have followed me last year and also this year and seen some of the videos where I've talked about it, I have talked about how I just don't want to buy Brandon Sanderson anymore, and I am not buying Brandon Sanderson anymore. So all the books that you will see in this video of Brandon Sanderson books are books that I bought before this year, and if I buy any new books I'm gonna buy them secondhand. And there's just a few Brandon Sanderson series where I'm just, you know, I'm losing my interest in the Brandon Sanderson series that I actually used to enjoy so far, and there's just some Brandon Sanderson series that I just high-key am not interested in continuing on. The Alcatraz series is one of those series I do not see the need to finish the series. I think there's one more book coming out, but yeah, not interested in continuing and reading that book. Then the second DNF for a series that I had this year was The Gilded Ones by Namina Forna. I think I mentioned it already in this type of video that I did last year, so at the end of 2021. But I was not sure yet if I wanted to DNF this series or not. But I have just decided that I didn't enjoy the first book enough. Like, in fact, I think I really didn't like it. And so there's just no need for me to read books that I don't really see myself enjoying, especially if they're YA, because I'm just not enjoying YA all that much anymore. The last DNF I have from this year is Malice by Heather Walter. I read this in summer and I hated this book. I think it's the worst book that I've read so far this year. I gave it 1 star. I originally wanted to do a rant review on this, but then I kind of waited too long and then I forgot all the things that I wanted to rant about. But yeah, I absolutely hated this book. Definitely not gonna continue on with the second book. I don't have this book on my shelves anymore. It's where I put all my books that I plan on unhauling. It's just the other books that I talked about I already did unhaul. This one I still have. I only unhauled it recently. And then lastly I have the 3 DNF series where I just have kept the books, where I didn't unhaul the books. In the series that I have read, first I have the Myth and Magic series, I believe, I think it's only 2 books by Carrie Arthur. I have only read the first book, Destiny Kills. I just kept the first book because I don't know why I kept it actually. But I remember really enjoying it when I read it. This is kind of paranormal fantasy romance. Then I have Mort by Terry Pratchett, which is the first book in the Mort series, which is part of the Discworld universe. I read this. I did not overly enjoy it because Terry Pratchett and absurdism just isn't for me. However, I really like this edition of the book, and I just, you know, like having some classics on my shelves, just, you know, to have them on my shelves, and Mort is one of those. And then lastly, a book that I don't have here. I haven't had it here for like, I think 3 years because my little sister still has it, and that is Howl's Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones. The reason why I just want to keep this copy, even though I did not like the book too much, is because the movie Howl's Moving Castle is my favorite movie of all time. And so I just like to keep the copy of the book. Technically, as I said, my little sister currently still has it, but technically it's not on hold. Moving on, let's get to the series that I am currently in the middle of, and let's start with the series that I did not start this year and where I also didn't read any books in that series this year. So first I have The Legends of the Condor Heroes by Jin Young. I only read the first book, A Hero Born, so far. However, the second book, which I think is A Bond Undone, is on my r/fantasy bingo, so I hope I'm gonna read it before April. This is translated from Chinese, and I believe the genre that this falls into is wuxia, so kind of Chinese martial arts type stories. Then I have Girls of Paper and Fire. I have read the first 2 books in the series. I still have to read the 3rd book. I do have the 3rd book on my TBR card right here, so I do own it. I just haven't gotten around to reading it yet. Next is a series that I will hopefully be caught up on by the end of the year, and that is the Burning Kingdoms series by Tasha Sudi. I have read the first book, which is The Jasmine Throne. I do own the second book, which is The Oleander Sword. I just haven't gotten around to it yet, but with this one as well, it's on my r/fantasy bingo, and I have a plan to finish it before the end of the year. We'll see if I'll get to it. A series that I really wanted to be caught up on this year is the Singing Hills series, which is a series of novellas by Ni Vo. The 3rd book, Into the Riverlands, came out at the beginning of November. I have ordered it. It just hasn't arrived yet, and I'm just... I really just want to finally read it, because this series is just one of my favorite series. And I usually don't like novellas, but I do love these ones. A series that's been unfinished on my shelves for probably almost 10 years by now is the Shadowfell series by Juliet Marillet. I've only read the first book, Shadowfell. I do want to finish this series at some point. It's YA high fantasy, but first I will have to reread the first book. Another YA series that I've only read the first book in is the Poison Study series, or the Chronicles of Ixia by Maria V. Snyder. I have only read the first book, Poison Study. I did really enjoy it though, even though I read this at a time where I was already growing out of YA. It's because generally I have found that I don't really enjoy current YA too much usually. I still really enjoy the kind of very early pre-2010 type of YA high fantasy, because a lot of times they're not, like, they don't fall as much into YA tropes or cliches as a lot of current YA does, so I tend to still really enjoy it. So this is one of the few YA series that I still do want to finish. A series that I had thought I had already finished, but then this year a new book was published in it, was The Other series by Anne Bishop. I don't have the first book right here. I only have the second book, which is Murder of Crows. However, actually, well, I'm too lazy to get it, but the book that was published, the new book that was published, was a sequel to one of the spin-off novels, which is Lake Silence, and it's called Crowbones, and I definitely want to read it. However, I am waiting until March when the paperback is being published. A series that I will have definitely finished by the end of the year, however, I'm always making these videos as a kind of, you know, snapshot of when I'm currently filming them. but nevertheless I wanted to mention that I will have finished the series by the end of the year, is the God King Chronicles by Mike Brooks. I read the first 2 books last year. The 3rd book was published sometime this year and I'm currently reading it. I am almost halfway through it, about a bit more than a third through it actually. And yeah, I'm so far enjoying it, so excited to finish this series. Then last year I read the first book in the Scions of the Black Lotus with Thorn of the Night Blossoms by J.C. Kang. I have not continued on with the series. It's a series of quite short novels, like kind of in length between a novel and a novella, like around 200-ish pages, I believe all the books are. I did enjoy this first book. I was not able to continue on so far this year. Like last year I read so many books and I've not been able to keep up with that. Last year I read 200 books. This year I'm not getting to 100, so yeah, there's a few series that are gonna have to wait for me to continue on with them. A series where the 2nd book was published this year but I did not get to it was The Unspoken Name, well, the sequel of The Unspoken Name. I think it's called The Serpent Gates, the series by A.K. Larkwood. This is a series following an orc. I did quite enjoy it when I read it last year. I had my issues with it. It's not like one of my favorite fantasy series of all time. However, I did enjoy it. I do want to continue on with the series. It's also sapphic and queer and gay, and yeah, let's hope that next year is the time when I'll manage. A series where I purposefully didn't continue on this year is The Drowning Empire Saga by Andrea Stewart. I only read the first book, The Bone Shard Daughter, so far. I do own the 2nd book, which is The Bone Shard Emperor. However, I wanted to wait until closer to the release date of the 3rd book for me to read the 2nd book, so that it's a bit more fresh on my mind, I guess. Another series where I have read only the first book, haven't gotten to the 2nd one yet, is The Last Binding series by Freya Marske. I have read the first book, which is A Marvelous Light. I have not gotten to the 2nd book yet, which I forgot the title of. This is historical fantasy. A book where no one will be surprised that I didn't exactly, you know, get to the 2nd book so far, although I technically started it. I like read the first 3 chapters or so far. Is the Bloodsworn Saga by John Gwynne. The first book was The Shadow of the Gods, which was one of the books I liked the least of the books that I read last year. And yeah, I do want to continue on with the series because, to be honest, I love the covers. So if I end up enjoying the 2nd and 3rd book and I have an excuse to buy books with these covers, then, you know, I'm gonna take that excuse. But so far, the 2nd book has not grabbed me yet. A series where the 3rd book has already come out and I just need to get around to finishing this series is The Burnt Empire Saga by Asha K. Banka. I read the first 2 books last year. The 3rd book, which I think is called A Blind King's Wrath, has come out this year. I do love the cover of the 3rd book as well. Like, this series just has some of the most gorgeous covers in fantasy currently. I haven't gotten around to it yet, okay? I need to get around to it. I haven't managed so far. Another series I will definitely finish this year is the Wax and Wayne Quartet by Brandon Sanderson. This is the 2nd era of Mistborn. I'm currently reading The Lost Metal, the last book, hating absolutely every second of it. As I said, I'm not the biggest Sanderson fan anymore, but yeah, it's been on my shelves for so long. I need to finish the series. So one last series that I'm in the middle of, but where I did not touch a single book in that series the entirety of this year, before we get to a few more series that I'm still in the middle of that I did read this year actually. But first, Aragon, or The Inheritance Cycle by Christopher Paolini. I have read the first 3 books. I think I read the 3rd book last year or the year before that. I don't remember anymore. I just have to finally read the 4th book. I just have, you know, eyes closed. Let's get through it. I just had like a German proverb in my mind that didn't work very well in English, but you know, just I just have to get through it. Just have to bite the bullet. Is that how you say it in English? I don't know. My brain is tired. So if I counted correctly, I have 5 series left that I am currently in the middle of. But with all of these series, I have at least read some of the books this year. The first 2 I started last year. First, I have The Dandelion Dynasty by Ken Liu. I read the first 3 books. The 3rd book was the one that I read this year. I also do already own the last book, which is The Speaking Bones. I just haven't started it yet, partially because I'm waiting for a friend to get done with the 3rd book, which is The Veiled Throne, so we can then buddy read the 4th book, because buddy reading is always motivating, especially when it comes to books that are like 1,000 pages long. Then the second series that I started last year and continued on with this year is the Millennium's Rule series by Trudy Canavan, which starts with Thieves' Magic. This is a 4-book series. I have once again already read the first 3 books. I in fact only read the 3rd book last month. I also do already own the 4th book. I just haven't gotten around to picking it up yet. And then there's 3 series that I started this year and I've only read the first book so far. First, I have The Tears of Artemun by Sarah Ashe. I at first wasn't sure if I wanted to continue on with the series or not. However, I have since come to a decision that I want to continue on with at least the 2nd book. And I do own the 2nd book already because it was really cheap on like this one used book website where I sometimes buy some of my books. It was like €1, €2, something along those lines. And so I was like, you know what, even if I end up not liking the series, the books are pretty cheap. Then I also started the Green Rider series by Kristen Britton. This was a buddy read. In fact, I really enjoyed this one actually, so I am kind of excited to continue on with the series. However, with this one, I am once again waiting until I can get the 2nd book for cheaper on that one used book website, which I saw it once, then I didn't buy the book, and since then it hasn't come back up, sadly. And then lastly, I have Gideon the Ninth, or the Locked Tomb series. I have so far read the first book, Gideon the Ninth. Still have to continue on with this series, but yeah, I'm in no hurry to continue on with this particular one because while I enjoyed it, I was like, you know, it's fine, I guess. So now we only have the series left that I am caught up in, and let's start with a few series that supposedly are part of the series, but it's kind of questionable if there's actually ever gonna be a sequel to those series. First, I have 2 Sanderson books. Elantris, of course, I have read the first book. Supposedly there's a sequel coming out at some point. And then the same deal also with Warbreaker. The sequel, Nightblood, supposedly is gonna come up at some point, or gonna come out at some point. Then there's 2 books that were originally supposed to be standalones, but that recently, I think sometime this year, sequels were announced for both of these books. First, I have Cemetery Boys by Aidan Thomas. The sequel is supposed to come out in 2024. And then I also, of course, a book that so far has been on my standalone list, I have also read The Priory of the Orange Tree, which I think the series is now gonna be called The Roots of Chaos, and the sequel is gonna come out, I believe, possibly in March next year. Not exactly sure. So a book where I guess actually I should have put it with my DNFs with the series because I don't really have any intention of picking up the sequel at any point is The Good Luck Girls by Charlotte Nicole Davis. This is a kind of steampunk alternate history, historical fantasy type YA novel, and I enjoyed this one, but yeah, I'm not that much into YA anymore. It pretty much worked as a standalone, so I don't think I'm ever gonna pick up the sequel. So just as with the series that I'm in the middle of, let's start with some series I'm caught up on that I was already caught up on when this year started. So no new books came out this year. I did not read any of the books in those series this year, so those types of series. First, I have The Last Hours by Cassandra Clare, although I will soon finish the series because the 3rd book, of course, is coming out in January, I believe. And then the other Cassandra Clare series I have is the Eldest Curses series by Cassandra Clare and Wesley Chu. However, for this one, I'm not sure when the third book is supposed to come out. Then next I have Anne Bishop. I have the Black Jewel series. The 12th book in this series is supposed to come out in March. It's called, I believe, The Queen's Price, if I remember correctly. And yeah, I'm very excited. It's gonna be the finale of this last kind of trilogy. It's kind of hard because this series is 12 books and they do only work as 12 books if you read them one after the other. So the trilogies, aside from the first trilogy, don't really stand on their own. However, then the books also are kind of plot-wise segmented a little bit into series. It's kind of complicated. But yeah, the 12th book is gonna come out in March. A series where I'm not exactly sure if it's gonna be a series or not, or if it's just gonna stay a standalone, is A Master of Jinn by Pete J. Lee Clarke. Currently there's 2 novellas as well as this novel out in the series in the same universe. I hope it's gonna be a series. It's as a series on Goodreads, so I don't know. That's what I'm going with, I guess. But yeah, I read all the books that are out so far in this series. Then I have 2 more Sanderson series. First I have, of course, the Skyward series, which is his YA sci-fi space opera. I really didn't like the last book. I think the 4th book is gonna come out in 2023, possibly, probably, I don't know. I don't care, to be honest, at this point. And then I also obviously have the Stormlight Archive series by Brandon Sanderson. I will still read the 5th book, so the finale of the first arc of the Stormlight Archive, and then let's see if I'm actually still interested enough in Brandon Sanderson to continue on with any of his books, because I am not sure. Like, I am hating my experience of The Lost Metal so much right now that I'm not sure if I will read any Brandon Sanderson after the 5th Stormlight Archive book. Some series that I can get out of the way pretty fast and that I've been caught up on since I have done these types of videos, which has been years by now, is of course, first of all, and there the books go. First of all, the Song of Ice and Fire series by George R. Martin, and then also The Name of the Wind or The Kingkiller Chronicles by Patrick Rothfuss. Next we have some books where I think I actually only read the first or the first 2 books in all of these series, all of them last year, but so far there's only been 1 or 2 books out in all of these series. First I have Knochenblumen welken nicht by Eleanor Badilak, which is a German author or Austrian author. It's Austrian high fantasy. Then I have the Radiant Emperor duology. I have read She Who Became the Sun so far by Shelley Parker Chan, and I am so excited for the sequel, which is He Who Drowned the World. Moving on, I have The Nameless Republic by Sui Davis Okungboa with Son of the Storm, and I'm actually not sure when the sequel to this one, which is called something with Storm, I believe, is gonna come out. Warrior of the Wind. Close enough. Obviously the second book is not gonna be something with Storm though, because the first book is called Son of the Storm. Anyway, then a book where we will get the sequel in 2023 is The Magic of the Lost by C.L. Clarke. I read the first book, The Unbroken, and I think the second book, The Faithless, is supposed to come out in March, if I remember correctly. And then lastly, before we can get to the series that I caught up to this year, we have The Band by Nicholas Ames. I have read the first 2 books in the series, which are Kings of the Wild and Bloody Rose. So I forgot the book from the series that I'm in the middle of, which is Daughter of the Moon Goddess or the Celestial Kingdom duology by Su Lin Tan. I do own the second book already, but I have not started it yet. So now we can move on to the series that I caught up to this year. First I have the Anita Blake Vampire Hunter series, which I read book, I think 26 to 28 this year. I'm finally caught up with the series. The 29th book is supposed to come out next year, and I'm not sure if I can say I'm excited, to be honest. But will I continue on with the series? You can bet on it. Then I have the Fall of Magic series by Val Neo. I am actually kind of ahead on this series so far because the second book, which I had an arc of, hasn't come out yet. It's gonna come out on the 25th of December. But absolutely love this series. It's like urban historical fantasy. A series where the sequel kind of disappointed me this year was Between Earth and Sky by Rebecca Roanhorse. The second book, Fevered Star, came out this April, and yeah, as I said, it slightly disappointed me. This is indigenous inspired or pre-Columbian Americas inspired high fantasy. Pretty much the first series I caught up to this year was the Rook and Rose series by M.A. Carrick. The Liar's Knot, which was the sequel to The Mask of Mirrors, was the first book that I read this year. And my first 5-star right away. Absolutely adored it, absolutely loved it. You will see it again on my favorite books of 2022 list. And yeah, very excited to finish this series next year when the sequel comes out in August. And then the last 4 books that I have on this list are just 4 first books in series that came out this year. So I read them and I'm caught up because so far there's only the first book out in all of these series. The first of those 4 books is Scorpica, which is the first book in the 5 Queendoms series by G.R. McAllister. I was sent an e-copy of this book for review and I then obviously bought myself a physical copy. Then I have City of Dusk, which is the first book in the Dark Gods series by Tara Sim. Enjoyed this one as well, and I think the cover for the second book actually was just recently released a few days ago on Twitter. Then I have the Ending Fire series by Sara El Arifi. The second book, The Battle Drum, is gonna be published next year. I wanna say spring. Or summer. I'm not 100% sure when the second book is gonna be published, to be honest. And finally, the very last book is the first book in the Sandsea trilogy. I just hit myself with that book. That was dangerous. The first book in the Sandsea trilogy by Chelsea Abdullah. The second book is gonna come out in autumn next year. But yeah, very excited to get to the sequel of this one as well. I have of course forgotten a series because it wouldn't be me if I didn't forget shit constantly. So I believe the series is just called The Bold, with the first book The Widow Queen by Elżbieta Czeresinska. I believe this is only a duology as well. So yeah, it's translated from Polish. Very excited to get to the second book because I did actually really enjoy this first one. And yeah, that was it. That was it for all the unfinished series on my shelves. I honestly did not count how many I talked about right here. Actually, wait a second. I forgot about a series because I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget about it, but I don't have the physical copy of the first book here. It's a series that I'm in the middle of, a duology. It's the Wilderwood duology by Hannah Witten, which is a kind of like fairy tale-esque retelling type adult high fantasy. But yeah, aside from that, should we count the books? Let's try and count the books. So if I did not miscount, I have a total of 51 series on my shelves that I have not finished, be that DNFs, be that I'm in the middle of those books or I'm caught up on them. And I already deducted the books that I on hold, so I already deducted those series. But yeah, I have a lot of series, so that was it for this video. Tell me in the comments down below which are some series that I'm in the middle of that I should prioritize to get into. And if you enjoyed this video, maybe think about giving me a thumbs up and also maybe subscribing. All the links to my social media as well as to my book club of Queens, Witches and Valkyries, where I read one adult high fantasy book written by a woman or genderqueer person per month, will be left linked down below, so go and check those out. And I hope I'll see you very soon. Bye!